They're looking for hope. They're looking for optimism. They're looking for opportunity. They want to stay here. This is a beautiful province. They want to be able to build their future here, but they can't. And so a lot of what we're going to be focused on as a Conservative Party of British Columbia is how we can show that, through our plan, through our approach that we're going to be taking, people can then see a future. They can see themselves being part of who we are and being part of what British Columbia's future is. We want to make sure that they're creating good paying jobs, that they're supporting families, and that people then can see, like I say, their future, that they can put some money away, they can dream of having a home. If there's changing climate or changing policies that are impacting that food production, that leaves the people in British Columbia vulnerable. As part of adapting to our climate, we need to make sure that we double food production. We need to drive down the cost of that food production. We're the highest cost producers in Canada.
And another thing involved with the youth is the education system. How do you plan to improve the standard of education in British Columbia? ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਫੋਕਸ ਰਹੇਗਾ ਯੂਥ। ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਵੋਟਰ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਕਿਉਂ BC ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਵਾਲੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਟਿਲਟ ਹੋਵੇ। ਜਿੱਥੇ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਰਿਪੋਰਟਸ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਹੁਣ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਬਟ ਕੀ ਉਹ BC ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ BC ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਨਗੇ? ਕੀ ਹਨ ਪਲਾਨਸ ਜੌਨ ਰਸਟਡ ਦੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਵੱਲ ਅਟਰੈਕਟ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ? ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। John, good evening and welcome to the program.
Thank you once again for having me on.
Thank you. Today I would like to focus upon a major crucial part of the electorate, which is the youth. What are your plans? How do you plan to attract them to vote for the BC Conservatives?
The largest voting bloc in British Columbia is the youth. It's 18 to 40 by a long shot. And typically they haven't voted in large numbers, and often they have voted for other parties. But what we are seeing with particularly with that group is because 1 and 2 are thinking about leaving this province, they're looking for hope. They're looking for optimism. They're looking for opportunity. They want to stay here. This is a beautiful province. They want to be able to build their future here, but they can't. And so a lot of what we're going to be focused on as a Conservative Party of British Columbia is how we can show that, through our plan, through our approach that we're going to be taking, people can then see a future. They can see themselves being part of who we are and being part of what British Columbia's future is. And so right now, a large number of that group are actually supporting us because they can see how we can bring about change and we can bring about that hope that they want to have. So we're going to continue with that. We're going to continue outreaching, especially through social media, to show them our plan to be able to see a brighter future for British Columbia.
But in reality, what plans do you have to bring in jobs for them? Because as you said, 1 and 2 are planning to leave British Columbia. They'll be attracted only if they have something over here. So do you have some specific plans, or you're still working on those whereby you'll be able to attract them to stay here?
There are many things that we need to be thinking about, and it's not just about a job, but it's also about good wages, making sure that they can see themselves in affordability. So I'll just give you one example of what we can do in this province. There are 17 mines in British Columbia that are either permitted or about to be permitted. Those mines represent a $38 billion investment in BC, will create between 20 and 30,000 jobs with an average wage and benefit of $138,000 a year, and will add about $800 billion to British Columbia's GDP over the life of those mines. These are the kinds of things that we want to be able to see get off the ground, to be able to provide those opportunities in those future for people to be able to have a career that can be family supporting and to build a future. There's many other components we need to do too. Especially the big challenge that British Columbia has is the business sector has no confidence to actually invest in British Columbia. When you've got a jurisdiction that's GDP is shrinking, that a government that is hostile and takes so long to get anything done, people are saying, I might as well go to another jurisdiction. So we need to change that to be able to build these opportunities in British Columbia with a sole purpose. It's not enough to have a business. We want to make sure that they're creating good paying jobs, that they're supporting families, and that people then can see, like I say, their future, that they can put some money away, they can dream of having a home, they can build their retirement. This is what people should be able to do in this province, and that's what we're going to deliver for them.
One issue about which everybody is concerned, and especially the youth, and we would like your comments on those, that when it comes to climate change, and that's a major issue whereby it is said that the Twitter, what you posted, and because of that you had issues with the BC Liberals also, that climate change is not real. Do you still believe that? What do you plan to do? Because the youth is very much interested in knowing what are your plans to preserve the climate. Right now, Even in British Columbia, we are seeing the wildfires that are happening. It is because the weather temperature is changing every year.
Yes.
So do you still stick to that point of what you said before, or you feel that it was misrepresented? What are your views on climate change?
So I have never denied that our climate is changing. And the NDP keeps saying that I've denied that.
Anti-climate
no,
activists.
they're lying. They're just lying, and that's all there is to it. Climate is changing.
Right.
However, we have a premier who believes that taxing people into poverty is going to change the weather. That's absolute nonsense. I mean, it just is. If he actually believes that, he is sillier than I ever thought he was. The reality is this. We're going to get rid of the carbon tax because, quite frankly, people cannot afford to be paying for the slush fund of government projects. What we will need to do is we need to adapt to our changing climate. We know it's real, and there's many things we can do on the forest and that side. But in terms of adapting, think of it this way. We only procure 34% of the food that we consume from British Columbia. 2/3 of our food comes outside of our border. If there's changing climate or changing policies that are impacting that food production, that leaves the people in British Columbia vulnerable. As part of adapting to our climate, we need to make sure that we double food production. We need to drive down the cost of that food production. We're the highest cost producers in Canada. And we need to make sure that food can be made available locally so that people can connect with those good, healthy products that we can produce in British Columbia.
Right.
We need to better manage water. We haven't had any significant investment in reservoirs and water management for decades. We need to be able to do that so that we have the water available for both agriculture as well as to meet our domestic needs and the needs within nature.
Right.
So these are the types of things that we should be doing. We need to make sure that as we're building out infrastructure, it's resistant to to our changing climate and the kind of conditions we have. We need to be looking at how we manage on the landscape to reduce the risk of fire. We got to actually be using fire as a tool back on the landscape. We need to be looking at different species mix. There's so much that we need to do. That's how we adapt to a changing climate. And for this government to say the only answer is to tax you to death, to take away your future, to say that you can't live in this province, and in some vain attempt to change the weather, that's just nonsense. And that is not what we're about. We need to be about doing what's right and appropriate for people. And if we've got a moment, I'll just go into one more very important thing about climate, which is electricity.
Yeah.
Government says we need to use heat pumps, we need to use electric vehicles. That's wonderful, but we don't have the electricity to do that.
Right.
If everybody in British Columbia had a heat pump, and all the businesses and all the residents had heat pumps, we would need to build the equivalent of 6 or 7 more Site C dams to generate the electricity needed.
Right.
Well, there's no plans to do that. We're certainly not going to build another dam in BC in all likelihood. So there is no plan by this government to actually produce the power we need.
Right.
We are already net importers of electricity. So we're going to be developing a very comprehensive plan in terms of how we can generate that power over the decades ahead, so
Right.
that we can implement these types of strategies. But until then, it is just wrong to be forcing people to do something that we have no way to be able to actually support from electrical generation, including electric vehicles.
Right.
The plan that's in place for electric vehicles cannot be met. We do not have the power for it. And plus, we're driving up the cost of vehicles and making it less affordable for people to actually be able to drive. So we'll change that. Not because we don't believe that we should be working towards it, but because we need to be realistic about what we're doing. We'll still be putting in the infrastructure that's needed, but we're going to have a realistic plan for that power generation so that we're able to give people those choices when they can afford it and the things that they would like to be able to do.
And another thing involved with the youth is the education system. How do you plan to improve the standard of education in British Columbia?
Our education system has seen a steady decline in results of reading, writing, arithmetic. This government has done away with any kind of testing. They've done away even with letter grades, although they're backing down away on that. All of that is leading to a lower quality of education standards in this province. We become very focused on teaching kids, quite frankly, so many issues like social issues and other things. We actually need to get our education system back to teaching kids how to think,
Right.
not what to think. And so material that is, about sexualization of our kids, material that is about indoctrinating kids into various thinkings, all of that should not be in our school. Our schools should be neutral, teaching kids the basics, making sure that they've got the skills, making sure they're prepared for the future, but most importantly, teaching kids how to think,
Right.
not what to think.
Right. ਸੋ ਜੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ 'ਤੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਬੰਧਿਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜੌਨ ਨੇ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਸੋ ਜੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ, ਜੌਨ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਨੌਜਵਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਆਕਰਸ਼ਿਤ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਾਲੇ ਪਾਸੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਜੌਬਸ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹਾਂ, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਦੋਵਾਂ 'ਚੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਰਿਪੋਰਟਸ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਕੋਲੰਬੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਜੌਨ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ, ਅਸੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਰਹਿਣ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇਨਫਰਾਸਟਰਕਚਰ ਬਣੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਐਜੂਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਮਿਆਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਹੋਵੇ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਬੱਚੇ ਕੀ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ, ਹਾਊ ਟੂ ਥਿੰਕ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਫੋਕਸ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਨਾ ਕਿ ਵਾਟ ਟੂ ਦੇ ਸ਼ੁੱਡ ਡਿਪੈਂਡ ਅਪੋਨ। ਸੋ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜੋ ਇਹਨੇ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਉਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਅਤੇ ਦੂਸਰੀ ਮਹੱਤਵਪੂਰਨ ਗੱਲ ਵਾਤਾਵਰਣ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਜੋ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਸਰਾਸਰ ਗਲਤ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਅਗੇਂਸਟ ਕਲਾਈਮੇਟ ਚੇਂਜ, ਮੈਂ ਸਮਝਣਾ ਕਿ ਰੀਅਲ ਹੈਗਾ, ਪਰ ਜਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਟੈਕਸ ਲਾ ਕੇ, ਕਾਰਬਨ ਟੈਕਸ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਪੈਸਾ ਇਕੱਠਾ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਮੈਂ ਉਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਹੱਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ। ਕਲਾਈਮੇਟ ਚੇਂਜ ਰੀਅਲ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਸ ਉੱਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ, ਪਰ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਇਹ ਕਹਿ ਦਿਓ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਹੋਰ ਇਲੈਕਟ੍ਰਿਸਿਟੀ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਆਏਗੀ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਕੋਲੰਬੀਆ ਨੈਟ ਇੰਪੋਰਟਰ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਲੈਕਟ੍ਰਿਸਿਟੀ ਦਾ, ਬਿਜਲੀ ਬਾਹਰੋਂ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਇੰਨੇ ਡੈਮਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੇ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਡਿਊਸ ਕਰ ਸਕਨੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਸਰਾਸਰ ਗਲਤ ਅਫਵਾਹਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਫੈਲਾਈਆਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ NDP ਵੱਲੋਂ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਕਲਾਈਮੇਟ ਚੇਂਜ ਦੇ ਹੱਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਕੁਝ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਉਸ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਾਡੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਕੰਮ ਕਰੇਗੀ, ਅਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੁਝ ਨਾ ਕੁਝ ਨਿਰਣੇ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਰਡਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਸਿਰਫ ਟੈਕਸ ਨਾਲ, ਬਲਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕੁਝ ਨਾ ਕੁਝ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਵਾਂਗੇ।